My name is Victoria Lane. I am 35 years old. A few years ago, I helped my husband move to my country so we could start a new life together. At first, he was very loving and caring. But after he finally got his residency, everything about him changed. He started humiliating me, flirting with other women, and acting like I meant nothing. Then one day, he left with another woman saying, "I'm done with you. Don't try to find me." When I heard those words, I didn't cry. I simply smiled and made one phone call. And 2 days later, everything changed for him. Before I tell you what really happened, please like and subscribe to the channel. And tell me your country in the comments. Now, let's begin. The man who broke my heart was 10 years younger than me. His name was Lucas. When we first met, he was living in a small developing country overseas. Life there was not easy, and he often talked about wanting a better future someday. We didn't meet in person at first. We actually met online through Snapchat. At the beginning, it was just simple conversations. A few messages, then video calls, late-night chats. Even though we were living in 2 different countries, we slowly started talking every single day. And over time, those conversations turned into something much deeper. When we first met, he was only 25. I was worried about the age difference from the very beginning. One night during our early conversations, I said to him honestly, "Lucas, don't you think the age gap between us is a problem?" He immediately shook his head. "Victoria," he said softly, "age doesn't matter to me." Then he smiled and added something that made my heart feel warm. "I love you for who you are, not for your age." At that moment, I believed him. I believed every word. You see, I have never been the type of woman who fits the typical beauty standards. I'm a little overweight. My style is simple. I have always preferred comfortable clothes over fashionable ones. But Lucas always told me that none of those things mattered to him. He used to say, "I don't care about looks. I care about the person." So when we eventually got married, I truly believed I had found someone who loved me for who I was. After our wedding, Lucas moved to the United States to live with me. I had a small but successful business here. I owned 2 clothing shops. They weren't huge stores, but they provided a comfortable life. For the first few months after Lucas arrived, everything seemed perfect. He was sweet, supportive. He helped around the house. Sometimes he even came to the shop with me and helped customers. Those early days made me believe our future would be beautiful. But slowly, things began to change. At first, it started with small comments. One evening while we were getting ready to go out, Lucas looked at my dress and laughed. "Victoria, this looks a little old-fashioned." I tried to laugh it off, but comments like that started happening more and more. Soon he began criticizing my appearance, my clothes, my weight, even my skin. One night, he looked at me and said something that stayed in my mind for days. "You know you're getting older now." Then he shrugged and added, "You should try harder to take care of yourself." At first I thought he was just being honest, so I tried to change. I joined a gym. I started dieting. I bought new clothes, modern clothes, clothes I normally would never wear. I even spent money on skincare products and beauty treatments. I wanted to make my husband happy, but no matter what I did, Lucas always found something to criticize. If I dressed nicely, he said I looked ridiculous. If I wore my usual clothes, he said I looked boring. It was like nothing I did was ever enough. And slowly, the comments became insults. Sometimes he even said things in front of other people. Once, while we were at a small gathering with friends, Lucas looked at me and joked, "Victoria should be thankful I married her." Everyone laughed awkwardly, but he continued, "If I hadn't married her, she would probably still be alone." My face felt hot with embarrassment, but I stayed quiet, because deep inside, I still hoped things would get better. Lucas also worked sometimes, but most of the time he depended on my business income. My clothing shops paid the bills. They paid the rent. They paid for our lifestyle. But strangely, that never stopped him from acting superior. Sometimes during arguments he would say things like, "You are nothing without me," or "You should be grateful I chose you." Those words hurt more than anything. Still, I tried to save the marriage because I believed that love required patience and sacrifice. Then one day something big happened. Lucas received the news he had been waiting for. His U.S. residency application was approved. He was extremely happy. That night he celebrated with friends. He said his life was finally secure. At the time, I thought this moment would bring us closer together. I thought now that the stress of immigration was over, our marriage would become peaceful again. But I was completely wrong, because after that approval, Lucas didn't just change. He became someone I barely recognized, and I had no idea that the most humiliating moment of my life was about to happen very soon. A few weeks after Lucas received his conditional residency approval, something inside him completely changed. It was like the mask he had been wearing for years suddenly fell off. Before that day, he at least pretended to care. But now, he didn't even try. Lucas started going out almost every night. At first, he would say it was for networking. Then it became meeting friends. Soon he stopped giving any explanations at all. Sometimes he would leave the house in the evening and return at 3 or 4 in the morning. Other nights, he wouldn't come home until sunrise. When I asked where he had been, he would simply shrug. Relax, Victoria. You worry too much. But it wasn't just the late nights. Lucas also became very active on social media. Pictures started appearing on his Instagram. Clubs, bars, luxury restaurants. And almost every picture included different women standing next to him. Young women, beautiful women. Sometimes their arms were around him. Sometimes he was holding their shoulders. When I asked him about the photos, he laughed. They're just friends. You're acting jealous again. One night, I saw a picture of him dancing in a nightclub with a girl who looked barely 22. My chest felt tight. But when he came home, I still tried to stay calm. Lucas, I said quietly, maybe we should spend more time together. He looked at me like I had said something ridiculous. Why? We live in the same house. Then he walked past me and went straight to bed. Weeks passed like this. Lucas treated the house like a hotel, a place to sleep, nothing more. Meanwhile, I kept running my clothing store, working long hours, trying to hold my life together. Sometimes I wondered if maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe this was just a difficult phase. Maybe one day he would realize what he was doing. But deep down, I could feel something was coming. And one evening, that moment finally arrived. I had just returned home from the store. The house was quiet. Too quiet. About an hour later, I heard a car stop outside. Headlights flashed through the window. Lucas had come back. But when the front door opened, I immediately realized something was different. Because Lucas wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a young woman. Tall. Confident. Dressed in expensive clothes. Lucas walked inside like it was the most normal thing in the world. The girl followed him, looking around the house with curious eyes. For a moment, I thought maybe she was just a guest. Maybe a coworker. But then Lucas did something that made my stomach drop. He casually placed his arm around her waist. Then he looked at me, completely calm. Victoria, he said, we need to talk. My heart started beating faster. Something felt very wrong. Lucas didn't even sit down. He just stood there with the girl beside him and said the words that changed everything. I'm done with this marriage. The room suddenly felt silent. The girl next to him smiled slightly. Lucas continued like he was announcing something ordinary. Her name is Sophia. He looked at her proudly. Sophia understands me. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Her family is very wealthy. We actually have a future together. For a moment, I couldn't even move. Lucas looked at me with a small smirk. You should start getting used to living alone. Then he turned toward the door. Sophia followed him without saying a word. The two of them walked outside together. A moment later, I heard the car engine start. And just like that, they drove away, leaving me alone in the middle of my own house. But something strange happened in that moment. Instead of crying, instead of begging, I slowly sat down on the couch. And then, I smiled. Because Lucas believed something that wasn't completely true. He believed his residency meant he was untouchable now. That no one could do anything. But Lucas didn't understand one very important detail. His residency was still conditional. And as I quietly picked up my phone, I made one single phone call, a call that would soon make Lucas realize he had made the biggest mistake of his life. I called an immigration attorney. The next morning, I reported everything: our marriage, his behavior, and the truth about what had really happened. You see, Lucas didn't have permanent residency. He only had a 2-year conditional residency, which means the government still had to confirm that the marriage was real. And if there was evidence of fraud, that status could disappear very quickly. Once the report was filed, an investigation began. Lucas had no idea. For 2 days, everything stayed quiet. Then, on the 3rd day, things started to fall apart for him. The first problem came from Sophia. It turned out that Sophia wasn't interested in Lucas himself. She was interested in what she thought he had: status, money, stability. But once the immigration investigation started, Lucas was no longer the man she thought he was. Within days, she disappeared, blocked his number, removed every photo, and walked out of his life. Suddenly, Lucas was alone, and for the first time, he began to understand the situation he had created. 2 days later, I heard someone knocking on my front door. When I opened it, Lucas was standing there, but he looked very different. The confident man who once laughed at me was gone. His face looked pale, tired, desperate. "Victoria, please," he said quickly. "I made a mistake." I wasn't thinking clearly. He stepped closer. "You know I didn't mean any of that." I was just confused. His voice started shaking. "Please call them and fix this. Tell them everything is fine. I can't lose my residency." For a few seconds, I just looked at him quietly. This was the same man who had once told me, "You should be grateful I married you." The same man who walked away with another woman. The same man who believed I was powerless. Lucas tried again. "Victoria, please. I need you." But this time, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anger. I only felt clarity. I stepped back slightly and said calmly, "No, Lucas. You don't need me. You just need the life you thought I could give you." His face froze. For the first time, he realized something important. I was no longer the woman who stayed silent. I was no longer the woman begging for love. I had finally chosen myself. And as Lucas stood there speechless, I slowly closed the door, leaving him outside. And this time, I wasn't losing anything. I was finally getting my life back.